Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Warning. The autumn rain pelted against the windows of the Wiggins home as Matthew sat in his study, reviewing quarterly reports from his construction company. At 35, he had built Wiggins Construction from nothing into one of Denver's most respected firms. His calloused hands, scarred from years of manual labor before becoming the boss, held the papers steady as thunder rumbled overhead. The front door slammed with unusual force, jolting him from his concentration. Quick, panicked footsteps echoed through the hallway, too urgent for his wife Ashley's usual graceful stride. Matthew's brow furrowed as he heard their 8-year-old son Peter's voice, high-pitched and frantic. "Dad, Dad, where are you?" Matthew rose from his leather chair, noting the desperation in his boy's voice. Peter burst into the study, and Matthew's heart lurched. His son's left eye was swollen nearly shut, dark purple bruising spreading across his cheek. Blood had dried under his nose, and his school clothes were torn and dirty. "Jesus Christ, Peter, what the hell happened to you?" Matthew knelt beside his son, gently examining the injuries with hands that had seen their share of violence in his younger days. Peter's remaining good eye darted toward the windows, then to the door. "Dad, we need to move houses immediately." His voice trembled, but there was an odd maturity in his tone that chilled Matthew to the bone. "Slow down, son. Tell me what happened. Who did this to you?" Peter shook his head violently. "We don't have time. They know where we live now. We have to pack and go somewhere they can't find us." He grabbed Matthew's shirt with small, desperate fists. Matthew's instincts, honed from growing up in Denver's rougher neighborhoods, kicked in. This wasn't the typical schoolyard scuffle. Peter had witnessed something that terrified him enough to demand they flee their home. "Who knows where we live, Peter? You need to tell me exactly what happened." Instead of answering, Peter pulled out his small smartphone, a device Ashley had insisted on buying him despite Matthew's reservations. The boy's hands shook as he unlocked it and handed it to his father. "I recorded it, Dad. I was hiding behind the equipment shed when I heard them talking." Matthew took the phone, his construction worker's intuition already warning him that whatever he was about to see would change everything. He pressed play on the video, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The shaky footage showed two figures near the school's maintenance building, a woman with Ashley's distinctive auburn hair and a tall man Matthew didn't recognize. The audio was unclear, but he caught fragments. "Husband, problem, permanent solution, insurance, kids saw us." The camera jerked as Peter apparently tried to get a better angle, and suddenly the man turned toward the camera. Matthew's jaw clenched as he saw the face clearly, ruggedly handsome with cold gray eyes that spoke of violence. The man pointed directly at Peter's hiding spot. "There, the kid." The video became chaotic as Peter ran, but not before capturing the man's words. "Find out where they live. We'll deal with both problems tonight." The recording ended with Peter's panicked breathing as he hid in what appeared to be a bathroom stall. Matthew's vision went red. That woman in the video was definitely Ashley, his wife of 10 years, the mother of his child. And she was plotting something that involved him being a problem requiring a permanent solution. "They chased me, Dad," Peter whispered. "The big man caught me by the parking lot and hit me. He said if I told anyone about what I saw, they'd hurt you and Mom." "But Dad," Peter's voice broke, "I think they want to hurt you anyway." Matthew pulled his son close, feeling the boy's body tremble against his chest. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside him. The last remnants of the man who believed in forgiveness and second chances died, replaced by something harder, colder, something forged in the furnaces of betrayal. "Peter, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Matthew said, his voice calm despite the rage building inside him. "Go upstairs and pack a bag with your most important things. Don't let your mother see you. Can you do that?" Peter nodded, his trust in his father absolute. "Good boy. And Peter, you did the right thing telling me. I'm going to handle this, but I need you to be brave a little longer." As Peter crept upstairs, Matthew sat back in his chair, mind racing. Ashley wasn't just cheating, she was planning something far worse. And she had involved their son, put him in danger, allowed him to be hurt. That crossed a line from which there would be no return. He looked at his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in years, Jamie Clark. Jamie ran a private security firm staffed with ex-military personnel, Men Matthew had served with in the army before starting his construction business. If Ashley and her mystery man thought they were playing a dangerous game, they were about to learn what real danger looked like. But first, he needed more information. Matthew opened his laptop and sent the video to a secure email account, then began making copies. Whatever Ashley was planning, she had made one critical mistake. She had underestimated the man she married. The front door opened again, and Ashley's melodic voice called out, "I'm home. Sorry I'm late. I had to stop by the office for some files." Matthew listened to her footsteps on the hardwood floor, heard her humming softly as she hung up her coat. She sounded so normal, so innocent. The woman he had loved, trusted, built a life with was casually walking into their home after plotting his demise and allowing his son to be beaten. Matthew? Peter? Where is everyone? He saved his work and closed the laptop, then walked to the living room where Ashley stood in her professional attire, a tailored black dress that hugged her figure, her auburn hair perfectly styled despite the weather. She was beautiful, he had to admit. Beautiful and deadly. "Hey babe," she said with a smile that once melted his heart. "Where's Peter? His backpack is by the door, but the house is so quiet." "He's upstairs," Matthew replied, studying her face for any sign of deception. "Rough day at school." Ashley's expression shifted to one of concern, an Oscar-worthy performance. "Oh no, what happened? Is he okay?" "Someone hurt him," Matthew said carefully. "Beat him up pretty badly." Ashley's hand flew to her mouth in apparent shock. "Oh my God. Did you call the school? The police?" "We need to." "It's handled," Matthew interrupted, his voice carrying an edge that made Ashley pause. "I'm taking care of it." Something flickered in Ashley's eyes. Was it relief? Fear? Matthew couldn't tell, but he filed the reaction away for later analysis. "Well, I should go check on him," Ashley said, moving toward the stairs. "He's sleeping," Matthew said firmly. "Let him rest." Ashley nodded, but Matthew caught her glancing toward Peter's backpack again. She was looking for something, probably the phone, wanting to know if Peter had captured anything damaging. "I'll start dinner," she said finally. "We should talk about increasing security around here if there are kids at school attacking other children." The irony of her words wasn't lost on Matthew. Security was exactly what he planned to discuss, just not in the way she expected. As Ashley moved to the kitchen, Matthew made his decision. The game was on, but Ashley and her mystery man had no idea they were now playing against someone who had been forged in much harsher crucibles than suburban infidelity. They wanted to eliminate him? They had just declared war on the wrong man. He picked up his phone and dialed Jamie Clark's number. It was time to call in some favors. Chapter 2. The Investigation. The next morning dawned gray and cold, matching Matthew's mood as he sat in his truck outside Meridian Marketing Solutions, the advertising firm where Ashley worked as an account executive. He had spent the night on the couch, claiming his back was bothering him, while Ashley slept peacefully in their bed, a performance that would have impressed him if it hadn't filled him with disgust. Jamie Clark slid into the passenger seat, his weathered face bearing the scars of multiple deployments overseas. At 42, he moved with the efficient grace of a man who had spent years in hostile territory. His security firm, Shield Tactical, employed former special operations personnel who specialized in corporate security and private investigations. "Hell of a thing, Wiggins," Jamie said, handing Matthew a tablet loaded with preliminary intelligence. "I had my tech guy enhance that video your boy shot. The audio's clearer now." Matthew took the tablet and plugged in earbuds. The enhanced audio made his blood pressure spike. Ashley's voice. The life insurance policy doubled last year when he expanded the business. 2 million. Unknown male voice. "And you're sure he hasn't changed the beneficiary?" Ashley, positive. "I handle all our paperwork. The only problem is making it look accidental." Male voice. "Leave that to me. I've handled bigger problems than some construction worker." Ashley, "What about his business partners? Caesar Meadows and Dwayne Reese." Male voice. "What about them?" Ashley, "They might ask questions." Matthew's paranoid about safety protocols. "An accident on site would be suspicious." Male voice. "Then we don't do it on site." Traffic accident. Home invasion gone wrong. "I have contacts." The recording continued with more damning details, but Matthew had heard enough. He handed the tablet back to Jamie, his jaw tight with controlled fury. "Professional hit," Jamie observed. "This isn't some lover's quarrel gone wrong. Your wife's recruited serious muscle." What else did you find? Jamie flipped through several photos on the tablet. Mystery man is Clayton Mathis, 38, former military but dishonorably discharged for conduct unbecoming. Since then, he's been linked to 3 suspicious deaths, all made to look accidental, all involving life insurance payouts. He's smart, careful, and expensive. Matthew studied Clayton's photo. The man looked like he could have been Matthew's brother. Same build, similar features, but where Matthew's eyes held warmth and integrity, Clayton's were cold and calculating. How did Ashley meet him? That's where it gets interesting. Jamie pulled up another file. 6 months ago, Ashley hired Meridian to handle advertising for a new client, Mathis Consulting, Clayton's legitimate business front. But here's the kicker. The consulting firm is just a shell. No real clients, no actual services. It exists solely to launder money from his other activities. The pieces clicked into place in Matthew's mind. She didn't meet him by accident. No chance. Clayton researched her, probably identified her as a potential asset months before making contact. Looking at her financial records, Ashley's been spending way above your household income. Credit cards, expensive clothes, jewelry. She's been planning this for a while. Matthew felt the familiar cold rage settling over him. The same feeling he'd had in combat when enemy fire came too close to his squad. What about Peter? How long have they known he might be a problem? According to the enhanced audio, they discussed the kid's schedule several times. They knew he stayed after school for art club on Thursdays. Clayton was waiting for him. The revelation that they had targeted his 8-year-old son with premeditation pushed Matthew past his breaking point. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths, channeling the anger into something more useful. I want round-the-clock surveillance on both of them. I want to know everywhere they go, everyone they talk to, every breath they take. Already in motion, Jamie confirmed. But Matthew, there's something else. Something bigger. Matthew looked at his old army buddy, recognizing the tone that meant bad news was coming. Ashley's not Clayton's first mark this year. We tracked down 2 other cases with similar patterns. Harold Preston in Sacramento, construction company owner, life insurance payout. Wife remarried 8 months after his accident. Ronald Wheeler in Phoenix, real estate developer, same pattern. Jesus Christ. How many people has this bastard killed? At least 6 that we can prove, probably more. And here's the real kicker. Both widows have since had their own accidents after the insurance money was safely transferred to offshore accounts. The implication hit Matthew like a physical blow. Even if Ashley succeeded in having him killed, she wouldn't live to enjoy the money. Clayton was playing a longer game, using women like her as disposable assets. She has no idea she's already dead, Matthew said quietly. None of them ever do. Clayton's patient, methodical. He builds trust, isolates his marks from their support systems, then eliminates everyone who could tie him to the crime. Matthew stared across the parking lot at the building where his wife was probably sitting at her desk, answering emails and taking client calls, all while planning his murder. The woman he had loved, protected, and provided for was not only betraying him, but walking blindly into her own execution. A normal man might have felt pity for her. Matthew felt nothing but contempt. His phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Hey babe, working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Let me guess, Jamie said, reading Matthew's expression. Late night at the office. Yeah, probably meeting with Clayton to finalize the details. Matthew started the truck's engine. Time to visit some old friends. What do you have in mind? Matthew's smile held no warmth. Ashley and Clayton think they're playing chess while I'm playing checkers. They're about to learn the difference between a construction worker and a combat engineer. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the parking lot of Wiggins Construction. The company Matthew had built occupied a sprawling complex of offices, equipment yards, and workshops. More than just a business, it was a family, 140 employees who trusted him with their livelihoods. Caesar Meadows and Dwayne Reese, his business partners and closest friends, were waiting in the conference room when Matthew arrived. Both men had served with him in Afghanistan, and both had invested their life savings in the company when Matthew started it 8 years ago. Caesar, a former explosives expert, was now the company's safety director. His methodical nature and attention to detail had earned them numerous safety awards and kept their insurance premiums low. Dwayne, who had been a military police investigator, handled human resources and security for the company. Gentlemen, Matthew said, closing the conference room door behind him and Jamie. "We have a problem." For the next hour, Matthew laid out everything. The video, Clayton's background, Ashley's betrayal, the threat to Peter. He watched his friend's expressions shift from disbelief to anger to cold determination. "So what's the plan?" Dwayne asked when Matthew finished. "They want to play with fire," Matthew replied. "We're going to give them an inferno." Caesar leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "What do you need?" "Access to the old military storage," Matthew said. "The equipment we kept from our contractor days overseas." Both men nodded. When they had started the company, they had acquired certain specialized equipment through military surplus channels, some of it officially, some through the gray market connections they had developed during their deployment. The equipment was stored in a secure bunker beneath the main office building. Surveillance gear, communications equipment, and other tools for a comprehensive operation, Matthew continued. "We're going to turn Clayton's own methods against him." "What about Ashley?" Dwayne asked. Matthew's expression hardened. "Ashley made her choice when she put our son in danger. Whatever happens to her is a consequence of that choice." Jamie pulled out his tablet and showed them surveillance photos taken that morning. Clayton's staying at the Grand Windsor Hotel downtown. Expensive suite, paid for with cash. He's expecting this to be a short-term operation. "How short?" Caesar asked. "Based on his pattern, he typically eliminates his primary target within 2 weeks of initial contact with local assets. Since Ashley's been feeding him information for 6 months, I'd say we have maybe a week before he makes his move." Matthew stood up, his decision crystallizing. "Then we move first. But we do this smart, clean, and permanent. When we're done, Clayton Mathis will wish he'd never heard the name Wiggins." As they planned their counteroffensive, Matthew felt a grim satisfaction settling over him. Ashley and Clayton had made the mistake of targeting not just a man, but a brotherhood forged in combat. They wanted to destroy his life. They had just declared war on the wrong family. The game was about to change dramatically. Chapter 3: The Depth of Betrayal. 3 days into Matthew's investigation, the full scope of Ashley and Clayton's conspiracy began to emerge. Matthew sat in the secure bunker beneath Wiggins' construction, surrounded by monitors displaying surveillance footage, financial records, and communications intercepts. What he discovered would have broken a weaker man. Guillermo Cantrell, Jamie's tech specialist, had spent 72 hours straight cracking Ashley's encrypted communications. The former NSA analyst's expertise in digital forensics had uncovered a network of deception that stretched back almost 2 years. "Your wife's been playing the long game," Guillermo said, his bloodshot eyes reflecting the strain of his marathon session. "Look at this." The first email was dated 18 months ago, sent from Ashley's personal account to an encrypted address later traced to Clayton. Target confirmed. Matthew Wiggins, Wiggins Construction, Denver. Net worth approximately $4.2 million. Life insurance $2 million. Potential complications: business partners with military background, 1 child, 8, strong family ties. Assessment: manageable risk, high reward. Matthew's hands clenched as he read his own life reduced to a target assessment. But it got worse. "She's been documenting everything," Guillermo continued, pulling up more files. "Your daily routines, security habits, business meetings, even Peter's school schedule." She compiled a complete operational profile. The next series of communications showed Ashley reporting Matthew's movements with military precision. Target leaves for work at 6:45 a.m. daily. Returns between 6 to 7 p.m. unless job site issues arise. Saturday mornings at gym, mountain fitness, Colfax. Sunday family time, usually parks or hiking. Carries concealed weapon, Glock 19, but not in-house. Home security system basic, rarely armed during day. Jamie whistled low. "She's been running surveillance on you for over a year. This isn't just betrayal. It's a military operation." Matthew scrolled through more communications, each one a dagger in his chest. Target's relationship with son, very strong. Possible leverage point if direct action fails. Child trusts me completely. Business partners, Meadows, Reese, former military. Recommend eliminating them as well if they become suspicious. Make it look like workplace accident. Target has been having minor health issues, back pain, stress headaches. Potential opportunity for gradual poisoning if timeline allows. The final communication, sent just 2 days ago, contained the operational timeline. Phase 1 complete. Target fully isolated from potential allies. Ready for Phase 2. Recommend Friday night. Traffic accident on Highway 70. Will ensure child is with grandmother that evening. Matthew looked up from the screen to find his friends and allies watching him with expressions of barely controlled rage. These men had followed him through hellish firefights in Afghanistan, but nothing had prepared them for this level of calculated betrayal. There's more, Guillermo said quietly. I traced Clayton's operation structure. He's got a network. The next screen showed a web of connections that made Matthew's blood freeze. Clayton wasn't working alone. He had a team of specialists. Della Randolph, former pharmaceutical tech, expert in untraceable poisons. Angelo Rowland, mechanic specializing in accident scenarios involving vehicles. Kirk Stevens, IT specialist handling identity changes and financial transfers. Edith Erickson, Ashley's own sister, serving as backup communications and alibis. Her sister, Matthew whispered. Edith knew. More than knew, Guillermo replied grimly. She's been part of the operation from day one. Look at this. The screen displayed text messages between Ashley and Edith from the previous month. Ashley, Matthew's getting suspicious about my spending. He questioned the jewelry purchases. Edith, stick to the plan. Once it's done, you'll have enough money to never worry about suspicious husbands again. Ashley, what about Peter? He adores his father. Edith, kids adapt. Especially with a generous trust fund and a stepfather who knows how to handle problems. The casual way they discussed destroying his son's life pushed Matthew beyond rage into something colder and more dangerous. He stood up slowly, his movement causing the others to tense. Caesar, I need you to contact Theodore Snow, Matthew said, referring to a former CIA operative who now worked private contracts. Tell him we need a full psychological profile on Clayton Mathis and his network. What are you thinking? Dwayne asked. I'm thinking we don't just stop them, Matthew replied. We destroy them so completely that their names become cautionary tales. Jamie pulled up another set of files. There's one more thing you need to see. We traced Clayton's finances through several shell corporations. The financial records revealed the true scope of Clayton's operation. Over the past 5 years, he had orchestrated the deaths of at least 12 people, accumulating over $20 million in insurance payouts, inheritance scams, and asset transfers. Each victim had been carefully selected, isolated, and eliminated. But the most chilling discovery was the pattern. After each successful operation, Clayton methodically eliminated his accomplices. The women who helped him target their husbands, the specialists who carried out the technical aspects, all of them eventually suffered accidents of their own. Ashley's already dead, Matthew said quietly. She just doesn't know it yet. So what's the play? Dwayne asked. Matthew walked to a secure safe in the corner of the bunker and retrieved a folder marked Contingency Alpha. Emergency protocols they had developed for the company, but never used. Inside were detailed plans for scenarios requiring extreme measures to protect their business and families. We're going to give Clayton exactly what he wants, Matthew said, spreading the documents on the table. A dead Matthew Wiggins. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Fake your death. Caesar asked. Better than that. We're going to let Clayton kill me, or think he has. Then, while he and Ashley are celebrating their success, we'll systematically dismantle their entire operation from the shadows. Guillermo looked up from his computers. That's actually brilliant. If Clayton thinks he's won, he'll let his guard down. Start eliminating the witnesses. Including Ashley, Jamie added grimly. Matthew nodded. She made her choice. Now she lives with the consequences. He paused, his expression softening slightly. But first, we get Peter somewhere safe. I won't risk my son becoming collateral damage in this war. Dwayne was already reaching for his phone. My brother Frank Baxter has that ranch in Montana. Ex-Marine, good security, completely off the grid. Peter could stay there until this is over. Good. Make the arrangements. Matthew turned to the group. Gentlemen, we have 4 days to plan the most important operation of our lives. Failure isn't an option, because if we fail, Clayton moves on to his next victims, and my family's blood is on our hands. As his team dispersed to begin preparations, Matthew stared at the surveillance photos of Ashley leaving her office building. She looked happy, confident, probably thinking about the new life she'd have after his death. She had no idea that her husband, The man she thought was just a simple construction worker was about to teach her and Clayton Mathis what it meant to face someone who had been forged in the crucible of real warfare. The student was about to become the teacher, and the lesson would be written in blood. Chapter 4. The Chess Master. Matthew stood in his home office at 3 a.m., staring at a three-dimensional tactical map spread across his desk. Red pins marked Ashley and Clayton's locations, blue pins indicated his team's positions, and yellow pins showed potential ambush sites. To an outsider, it might have looked like the planning for a military operation, which, in essence, it was. Peter had been safely transported to Frank Baxter's ranch in Montana the previous evening, officially visiting his Uncle Frank for a week-long camping trip. The boy had been reluctant to leave, sensing something was wrong, but Matthew's promise that he would explain everything when Peter returned had been enough. Now, with his son secure, Matthew could focus on the deadly game ahead. Theodore Snow arrived precisely at 3:15 a.m., moving through the shadows with the fluid grace that had made him legendary during his CIA days. At 51, Theodore's weathered face bore the map of operations in a dozen hostile countries, but his mind remained razor-sharp. "Interesting situation you've got here, Wiggins," Theodore said, accepting a cup of coffee and reviewing the intelligence files. "Clayton Mathis is more dangerous than your initial assessment suggested." "How so?" Theodore pulled out a tablet loaded with classified psychological profiles. "I reached out to some old contacts. Mathis isn't just a killer, he's a sociopathic genius. IQ of 157, photographic memory, and absolutely no emotional connections to other human beings. He views people as resources to be exploited and discarded." Matthew studied the profile. Clayton's military service showed initial promise. High scores in tactical assessment and leadership, but disciplinary issues began appearing within 6 months of deployment. Incidents of excessive violence during interrogations, suspected theft of Iraqi cultural artifacts, and finally, the incident that led to his discharge, the execution-style killing of 3 suspected insurgents who had already surrendered. He was cashiered not for killing, Theodore continued, but for how much he enjoyed it. His commanding officer noted that Mathis displayed sexual arousal during violence. The revelation added a disturbing dimension to the threat. Clayton wasn't just after money. He was a predator who had found a way to indulge his darkest impulses while profiting from them. "What about his network?" "Carefully selected broken people," Theodore replied. "Della Randolph lost her medical license for stealing narcotics. Then her husband left her when she couldn't stop using. Angelo Rowland has gambling debts that would get him killed if he doesn't keep earning. Kirk Stevens is a paranoid schizophrenic who thinks the government is monitoring him through his computer. And Edith." Theodore's expression darkened. "Your sister-in-law is possibly more dangerous than Clayton. Where he's a sociopath, she's a narcissist with delusions of grandeur. She genuinely believes she's superior to everyone around her and that normal moral rules don't apply." Matthew absorbed this information, adjusting his mental picture of the opposition. Recommendations? Don't underestimate any of them, but focus on Clayton. Remove him, and the network collapses. His people are tools, not true believers. At 4 a.m., the rest of Matthew's team assembled in the secure bunker. The past 3 days had transformed the space into a military command center. Guillermo had established secure communications links, surveillance feeds, and electronic countermeasures. Jamie had positioned his SHIELD tactical operatives at strategic points throughout the city. Caesar and Dwayne had weaponized the construction company's resources in ways that would have impressed their former commanding officers. "Status report," Matthew began. Jamie consulted his tablet. "Clayton met with Angelo Rowland yesterday at a chop shop on the south side. They examined a stolen sedan, same make and model as your truck. They're planning to ram you on Highway 70, probably tonight or tomorrow." Ashley's movements. "Increasing surveillance of your routines. She's been tracking your GPS through your phone's location services. Yesterday, she asked Peter about your weekend plans, specifically whether you'd be taking your usual Saturday morning gym run." Dwayne pulled up financial records. "We've traced money transfers from Clayton to his network. 50,000 to Angelo for the accident, 25,000 to Della for her services, and 20,000 to Kirk for identity documentation. They're moving fast." "Which means we move faster," Matthew said. "Caesar, what's our status on the special project?" Caesar grinned with the expression of a man who enjoyed his work. The body double is ready. Jimmy Vega from the movie industry owes me a favor from when we provided security for that film shoot. Professional Hollywood effects, burned beyond recognition, but with your dental records, DNA samples, and personal effects. Matthew nodded. The plan was audacious, but necessary. They would stage his death in a way that satisfied Clayton's requirements while providing Matthew the presumed dead status he needed for his counterattack. Theodore, I need psychological warfare strategies. How do we break them mentally before we destroy them physically? The former CIA operative smiled coldly. Clayton's greatest strength is his belief in his own superiority. We shatter that by showing him he's been outmaneuvered by people he considers inferior. Ashley's weakness is her narcissism. She can't conceive of consequences for her actions. Specific tactics? For Clayton, demonstrate that his entire operation has been compromised from the beginning. Show him surveillance footage of his private moments. Personal information he thinks is secret, evidence that he's been dancing to your tune all along. For Ashley, expose her to the reality of Clayton's intentions. Let her discover she's expendable. Nothing destroys a narcissist faster than realizing they're not the main character in their own story. Matthew studied the timeline they had constructed. Based on their communications, they're planning to move tomorrow night. That gives us 18 hours to finalize everything. Guillermo looked up from his computers. I've prepared digital evidence packages that will automatically upload to law enforcement databases once triggered. Financial records, communications, video evidence. Everything needed to ensure the survivors face federal charges. What about the children? Dwayne asked. Edith has 2 kids. Angelo has a daughter. Matthew's expression softened slightly. Collateral damage is to be minimized, but their parents made the choice to participate in murder. The children go into protective services after their parents are arrested or eliminated. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. They were planning the systematic destruction of an entire criminal network, a task that required the deaths of multiple people. Anyone having second thoughts? Matthew asked quietly. Jamie spoke for the group. These people were planning to murder you, and probably your son. They've killed at least 12 others. This isn't revenge, it's pest control. Theodore nodded agreement. In my experience, people like Clayton don't stop until they're stopped permanently. Every day he remains operational, innocent people die. Matthew looked around the room at his brothers in arms. Men who had followed him through literal hell and were now willing to help him create a different kind of hell for his enemies. Then we proceed as planned. Tomorrow night, Matthew Wiggins dies in a tragic accident. By Sunday morning, Clayton Mathis and his network will discover what it means to be hunted by ghosts. As the team dispersed to make final preparations, Matthew walked to his house one last time. Ashley was sleeping peacefully in their bed, probably dreaming of her new life funded by his death. He stood in the doorway, memorizing her face, not out of love, but to remember exactly what betrayal looked like. Tomorrow, the war would begin, and Matthew intended to win it so decisively that men like Clayton Mathis would think twice before targeting families like his. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Chapter 5, The Trap Springs. Friday evening arrived with an unseasonable warmth that made the streets of Denver feel electric with possibility. Ashley Wiggins checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror one final time, applying lipstick with steady hands despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Tonight, after 18 months of careful planning, she would finally be free. At 7:30 p.m., Matthew kissed her goodbye at the front door, his lips brushing her forehead with the same tenderness he had shown throughout their marriage. If he suspected anything, his performance was flawless. Drive safe, Ashley said, managing to inject just the right amount of wifely concern into her voice. The roads are still slick from yesterday's rain. Always do, Matthew replied, hefting his gym bag. I'll probably grab dinner with Caesar after the workout. Don't wait up. Ashley watched through the living room window as Matthew's black Ford F-150 pulled out of their driveway and disappeared into the evening traffic. She waited exactly 3 minutes, the time it would take him to reach the first intersection, before dialing Clayton's number. He just left, she said without preamble. Perfect timing. Clayton's voice was calm, professional. Angelo's in position at mile marker 47. Della's standing by at Denver General with the emergency room contacts. Kirk has the identity transfers ready to execute. And afterward? Afterward, you're a grieving widow who inherits everything. We'll wait the appropriate mourning period. Then you disappear to start your new life. Ashley closed her eyes, picturing the house in the Cayman Islands Clayton had shown her photos of, the numbered bank accounts, the freedom from Matthew's suffocating middle-class existence. After tonight, she would never again have to pretend to care about construction schedules, safety meetings, or her husband's boring friends. "I love you," she whispered into the phone. "I know," Clayton replied, and the line went dead. 20 miles away, Matthew Wiggins sat in the passenger seat of an identical Ford F-150, driven by Sean Bass, one of Jamie's most trusted operatives. They were following Highway 70 exactly as Matthew did every Friday evening, but maintaining a careful distance from the truck that carried the target Clayton and Angelo were expecting. That truck, driven by Jeffrey Cotton, another SHIELD tactical operative, contained the Hollywood-quality body double Caesar had arranged. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let Clayton's team carry out their perfect crime, complete with burned wreckage and a body too damaged for immediate identification. By the time the dental records were processed, records that had been switched in the coroner's database by Kirk's own hacking, Matthew would be officially dead. Target vehicle spotted. Jeffrey's voice crackled through the encrypted radio. Black sedan, 2 occupants, positioned behind the concrete barriers at mile marker 47. Matthew felt a cold satisfaction wash over him. After months of being hunted, he was about to turn the tables on his predators. "All units, this is command." Jamie's voice came through the communication system. "Execute Phase 1. What happened next unfolded with military precision. Jeffrey's truck rounded the curve at mile marker 47, and Angelo Rowland's stolen sedan shot out from behind the concrete barriers, ramming into the passenger side at 60 miles per hour. The collision was catastrophic, exactly as Clayton had planned. But what Clayton hadn't planned for was the incendiary device Caesar had installed in the truck's cab. The resulting explosion turned the vehicle into a rolling inferno that burned so hot it melted the asphalt beneath it. "Beautiful work," Matthew murmured, watching the flames consume what Clayton believed was his body. Angelo Rowland staggered from his wrecked sedan, blood streaming from a head wound. He managed to pull out his cell phone and dial Clayton's number. "It's done," he gasped. "Target eliminated. But I need medical attention." "Negative." Clayton's voice was ice cold. "You know the protocol." Angelo's eyes widened in panic as he realized what Clayton meant. Before he could respond, a single rifle shot from Guillermo's position in the tree line ended Angelo's role in the operation permanently. "Phase 1 complete," Jamie reported. Moving to Phase 2. While emergency responders rushed to the accident scene, Matthew's team began the second phase of their operation. Clayton had made a critical error in his operational security. He believed he was the only predator in the game. At 9:15 p.m., Ashley received the call she had been expecting. A Colorado State Patrol officer informed her that her husband had been killed in a traffic accident on Highway 70. She performed her grief beautifully, collapsing in apparent shock, sobbing into the phone with just the right amount of hysteria. 20 minutes later, Clayton arrived at her house to comfort the grieving widow. He held her as she cried, whispered reassurances about their future together, and helped her call family members to share the devastating news. Neither of them noticed the micro cameras Guillermo had installed throughout the house, or the listening devices that transmitted every word to Matthew's command center. "She's really selling it," Dwayne observed, watching Ashley's performance on the monitors. "Natural talent," Theodore replied. "Narcissists are excellent actors when the stakes are high enough." At 10:30 p.m., Ashley called Edith to share the news. Her sister's response revealed the depth of their conspiracy. "Oh, Ashley, how terrible." Edith's voice managed to convey shock and grief. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "Clayton's here with me," Ashley replied. "He's been so supportive." "Clayton, your new business client? How wonderful that you have someone to lean on during this difficult time." The recorded conversation would later be entered as evidence, but for now, it simply confirmed what Matthew already knew. His sister-in-law was as guilty as his wife. Phase 3 began at midnight. While Ashley and Clayton made love in the bed Matthew had shared with his wife for 10 years, his team moved against the remaining members of Clayton's network. Della Randolph was arrested at Denver General Hospital when she arrived to assist with the identification of Matthew's body. Federal agents had been tipped off about the stolen narcotics in her car, narcotics that Theodore had planted there earlier in the evening. Kirk Stevens discovered that his computer systems had been completely compromised when he attempted to execute the identity transfers for Ashley and Clayton. Instead of moving money to offshore accounts, his transactions triggered automatic alerts to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. By 1 a.m., federal agents were breaking down his door. But the most elegant part of Matthew's plan was just beginning. At 2 a.m., Clayton's cell phone received a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. A friend." The message included an address, a warehouse on the outskirts of Denver that Clayton had used for previous operations. Curious and slightly concerned, Clayton slipped out of Ashley's bed and drove to the location. The warehouse appeared empty when he arrived, but Clayton's instincts warned him something was wrong. As he stepped inside, motion-activated lights illuminated the space, revealing a shocking sight. The walls were covered with photographs, surveillance images of Clayton taken over the past 18 months. Photos of him with previous victims, financial records of his offshore accounts, and detailed dossiers on every operation he had conducted. In the center of the warehouse sat a single chair with a manila folder on it. Clayton approached cautiously, his hand moving to the pistol concealed beneath his jacket. The folder contained copies of every communication between him and Ashley, financial transfers to his network, and a complete organizational chart of his operation. But the final document made his blood freeze, a detailed psychological profile of Clayton Mathis, complete with psychiatric evaluations from his military service and assessments from previous victims who had survived his preliminary targeting. At the bottom of the profile, a handwritten note. "You made one critical error, Clayton. You assumed your prey was defenseless. Matthew Wiggins." Clayton spun around, drawing his weapon, but the warehouse remained silent and empty. Then the lights went out, plunging him into absolute darkness. When emergency lighting kicked in 30 seconds later, Clayton found himself surrounded by 6 men in tactical gear, their weapons trained on him with professional precision. At their center stood a figure Clayton recognized from the surveillance photos. Matthew Wiggins, very much alive and very much in control. "Hello, Clayton," Matthew said, his voice carrying the same calm tone Clayton had used when planning Matthew's death. "I believe you wanted to meet me." The hunter had become the hunted, and the real game was just beginning. Chapter 6. The Reckoning Begins. Clayton Mathis stood in the center of the warehouse, his pistol trained on Matthew Wiggins, but his confidence was rapidly evaporating. 6 laser sights painted red dots across his chest and forehead, and the men surrounding him moved with the disciplined precision of professional soldiers. "Impressive resurrection," Clayton said, attempting to maintain his composure despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "Though I have to ask, if you faked your death, what happened to the poor bastard in the truck?" Matthew stepped closer, staying just outside Clayton's effective range. "Hollywood magic. Silicone, pig's blood, and dental implants. Your associate Angelo died believing he had successfully completed his mission." The casual mention of Angelo's death sent a chill through Clayton. If Matthew had eliminated Angelo, it meant he knew far more about the operation than Clayton had anticipated. "What do you want?" Clayton asked, his mind racing through possible escape scenarios. "Justice," Matthew replied. "You see, Clayton, you made a fundamental error in your approach. You treated me like a victim instead of recognizing me as a fellow predator." Theodore Snow emerged from the shadows, carrying a tablet loaded with Clayton's psychological profile. "You're a sociopath, Clayton. Textbook case. But you lack imagination. Your methodology is effective but predictable." Clayton's eyes darted between the men surrounding him, looking for weaknesses in their formation. "You can't kill me. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. You're construction workers, not assassins." Jamie Clark laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Construction workers? Clayton, you really didn't do your homework. Matthew and his team are former military contractors who spent 3 tours in Afghanistan eliminating high-value targets. What you see as a construction company is actually a cover for a very different kind of operation." The revelation hit Clayton like a physical blow. He had researched Matthew's surface identity, but missed the deeper truth. Wiggins Construction was staffed with former special operations personnel who had transitioned their military skills to civilian applications. "The beauty of your plan," Matthew continued, Was it simplicity? Target a successful businessman, seduce his wife, eliminate any threats, collect the insurance money. Rinse and repeat. But you chose the wrong businessman. Caesar stepped forward, his explosives expertise evident in the way he carried himself. See, Clayton, we've been tracking your entire network for months. Every communication, every financial transfer, every safe house. You're not running an operation. You're participating in our operation. Clayton's pistol wavered slightly as the scope of his miscalculation became clear. You can't prove anything. Ashley will testify that I was with her all evening. Ashley. Dwayne pulled out his phone and played a recorded conversation. Clayton's own voice filled the warehouse. After the insurance money is transferred, we eliminate the wife. Standard protocol. Can't have witnesses. Clayton's face went white as he realized the recording had been made during a conversation he thought was private. That's not possible. We used encrypted communications. Guillermo emerged from behind a support column, his laptop open and displaying real-time surveillance feeds. Nothing's encrypted when you have NSA-level capabilities. We've been inside your network since day one. The psychological warfare was having its intended effect. Clayton's carefully constructed superiority complex was crumbling as he realized he had been outmaneuvered at every turn. Here's what's going to happen, Matthews said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to command. You're going to call Ashley and tell her there's been a complication. You need to move up the timeline for eliminating witnesses. I won't. Caesar raised his weapon, the laser sight centering on Clayton's forehead. You will, or we'll skip the psychological torture and move directly to physical elimination. Your choice. Clayton looked around the warehouse one more time, then slowly reached for his phone. Matthew nodded to Guillermo, who activated recording equipment. Ashley, it's me, Clayton said when she answered. We have a problem. The police are asking more questions about Matthew's accident than we anticipated. We need to accelerate the timeline. What do you mean? Ashley's voice carried genuine concern. I mean, we need to eliminate potential witnesses tonight. Anyone who might connect us to the operation. There was a pause on the line. You're talking about killing people? I'm talking about protecting our future. This was always part of the plan, Ashley. You knew that. No, I thought we were just removing Matthew from the picture. You never said anything about killing other people. Clayton's eyes met Matthew's, recognizing the trap that had been laid. Matthew had orchestrated this conversation to expose Ashley to the reality of what she had become involved in. Ashley, listen to me very carefully, Clayton continued, following Matthew's gestured instructions. I've killed 12 people in the past 5 years. Matthew was just another payday. And when this operation is complete, you'll have an accident too. That was always the plan. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Ashley's voice returned, small and frightened. You're lying. Check your laptop. I've sent you files documenting every operation. Look at the pattern, Ashley. Every woman who helped me ends up dead within 6 months. Matthew gestured for Clayton to end the call. As the line went dead, Guillermo confirmed that Ashley had indeed accessed the files that had been automatically uploaded to her computer. Phase 4 is now in motion, Theodore announced. The target's support network is psychologically compromised. Matthew studied Clayton's face, noting the dawning realization that he had been manipulated into destroying his own operation. You're wondering how we knew exactly what to make you say. Psychological profiling, Theodore explained. Sociopaths are predictable once you understand their fundamental motivations. You view other people as disposable resources. When pressured, you always reveal the truth about your intentions because you can't conceive of genuine human connections. Clayton's hand tightened on his pistol. You think you've won? I still have contacts, resources. This isn't over. Actually, it is, Dwayne said, consulting his tablet. Your offshore accounts have been frozen by federal authorities. Your safe houses are under surveillance. Della Randolph is in federal custody, and Kirk Stevens is being processed for multiple felonies. And Ashley? Clayton asked. Matthew's smile held no warmth. Ashley is about to learn what happens to people who betray their families. As if summoned by his words, Matthew's phone rang. Ashley's name appeared on the caller ID. Matthew. Ashley's voice was hysterical, sobbing. Matthew, something's wrong. Clayton, he's been lying to me. He's killed people. He was going to kill me too. Matthew activated the speakerphone so Clayton could hear his wife's panic. That's impossible, Ashley. I'm dead, remember? You watched me burn on Highway 70. The silence that followed was absolute. When Ashley finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How do you know about the accident? Because I know everything, Ashley. I know about the 18 months of surveillance. I know about your sister's involvement. I know about the insurance money and the house in the Caymans. Most importantly, I know you chose Clayton over your own family. Matthew, please, I can explain. There's nothing to explain. You made your choice when you put our son in danger. When you allowed him to be beaten and threatened. That was the moment our marriage ended. Clayton listened to the conversation with growing desperation. His carefully constructed operation was unraveling, and the woman he had manipulated into betraying her husband was now begging that same husband for forgiveness. What do you want? Ashley asked, her voice broken. Justice, Matthew replied. And you're going to help me deliver it. The end game was approaching, and Clayton Mathis was beginning to understand that he hadn't been hunting a victim. He had walked into the web of a much more dangerous predator. Chapter 7. The Final Gambit. Ashley Wiggins sat in her living room at 3 a.m., staring at the laptop screen that displayed the horrific truth about Clayton Mathis. 12 victims across 5 years, each operation following the same methodical pattern. Seduce a woman close to the target, gather intelligence, eliminate the primary target, then eliminate the accomplice. The files Clayton had sent contained photographs of the women who had helped him. Martha Preston in Sacramento, Gloria Wheeler in Phoenix, Sandra Mitchell in Tucson, all of them now dead, their deaths staged as accidents or suicides after Clayton had secured their husband's life insurance payouts. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone and dialed the number Matthew had given her. I'm ready to help, she whispered when he answered. Good. Here's what you're going to do. 20 minutes later, Ashley was driving through the empty streets of Denver toward the warehouse where Matthew held Clayton captive. Her mind raced with the implications of what she had learned. For 18 months, she had believed she was orchestrating her escape from a mundane marriage. Instead, she had been choreographing her own execution. The warehouse loomed against the night sky as Ashley parked beside Clayton's car. Her phone buzzed with a text from Matthew. Remember, everything depends on your performance. His life and yours hang in the balance. Inside the warehouse, Clayton paced within the circle of armed men, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. When Ashley entered, his face showed a mixture of relief and suspicion. Ashley, thank God. These men are holding me prisoner. We need to call the police. Ashley looked at Clayton, really looked at him, and saw not the charming businessman who had seduced her, but the cold-blooded killer who had planned her death from their first meeting. I've seen the files, Clayton, she said quietly. I know what you are. Clayton's expression shifted, the mask of charm slipping to reveal the predator beneath. You don't understand. Those files were fabricated. Matthew is trying to turn you against me. Show her, Matthew said to Guillermo. The tech specialist activated a large monitor mounted on the warehouse wall. Security footage began playing, real surveillance video from Clayton's previous operations. Ashley watched in horror as Clayton strangled Gloria Wheeler in a hotel room in Phoenix, then staged the scene to look like suicide. That's Martha Preston, Theodore said as the next video played, showing Clayton pushing a woman from a balcony in Sacramento. Official cause of death, accidental fall while intoxicated. Ashley's legs gave out, and she collapsed into a folding chair that Dwayne positioned behind her. How many? She whispered. 12 that we can prove, Matthew replied. Probably more. And you would have been number 13. Clayton's facade finally cracked completely. You stupid bitch, he snarled at Ashley. You were always expendable. Did you really think I would share $20 million with a suburban housewife who couldn't even properly seduce her own husband? The casual cruelty in his voice hit Ashley like a physical blow. For the first time since the operation began, she understood the true nature of the man she had trusted with her life. Here's what's going to happen, Matthew said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to life and death decisions. Clayton, you're going to call your remaining contacts and tell them the operation is compromised. You're going to order them to scatter and disappear. I won't. Caesar stepped forward, his weapon trained on Clayton's kneecap. You will, or we'll start with your legs and work our way up. Your choice. Clayton looked around the warehouse, seeing no escape route, no leverage, no way to regain control of the situation. With visible reluctance, he made the calls, ordering his remaining network to abandon their positions and flee. Excellent, Matthew said when the calls were complete. Now for the final phase. Theodore produced a legal document from his briefcase. This is a detailed confession, Clayton. It lists every operation you've conducted, every person you've killed, and every crime you've committed. You're going to sign it. And if I refuse? Then we skip the legal niceties and handle this the way we dealt with problems in Afghanistan. Jamie replied coldly. Clayton read through the confession, his face growing paler with each page. The document was comprehensive, detailing crimes that even the FBI didn't know about. Signing it would guarantee life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is extortion, he said finally. This is justice, Matthew corrected. You have 60 seconds to decide, federal prison or a shallow grave in the Colorado wilderness. Clayton looked at Ashley, perhaps hoping for some sign of support or sympathy. Instead, he saw only revulsion and fear. The woman he had manipulated into betraying her family now understood exactly what kind of monster she had allied herself with. Where's my guarantee that you'll honor this deal? Clayton asked. You have my word, Matthew replied. The word of a construction worker? Matthew's smile was predatory. The word of a man who just outmaneuvered someone who thought he was the smartest person in the room. With visible reluctance, Clayton signed the confession. As soon as the ink dried, Jamie activated a secure communication device. Control, this is Shield Actual. Package is ready for delivery. The warehouse doors opened, and 6 federal agents entered, led by Special Agent Loretta Freeman of the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force. She approached Clayton with handcuffs and a warrant. Clayton Mathis, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. As the agents led Clayton away, he turned back to Ashley with pure hatred in his eyes. You think this saves you? You're still an accessory to attempted murder. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Ashley looked at Matthew, desperation in her eyes. Is he right? Matthew's expression was unreadable. That depends on how cooperative you are with the federal investigation. Special Agent Freeman approached Ashley with a second set of handcuffs. Mrs. Wiggins, you're also under arrest. However, given your cooperation and the evidence we've recovered, the prosecutor is prepared to discuss a plea agreement. As Ashley was led away, she looked back at Matthew one final time. What about Peter? What about our son? Peter will be fine, Matthew replied coldly. He'll be raised by people who understand the concept of loyalty. The warehouse fell silent as the federal agents departed with their prisoners. Matthew's team began dismantling their equipment, erasing all traces of their operation. Think they'll get life sentences? Dwayne asked. Clayton will, Theodore replied. Ashley might get 15 to 20 if she cooperates fully. Matthew stood in the empty warehouse, feeling a grim satisfaction. Clayton Mathis's reign of terror was over, and Ashley would spend the next 2 decades contemplating the consequences of betraying her family. But the operation wasn't complete yet. There was still one loose end to tie up. Gentlemen, Matthew said, we have one more stop to make. 20 minutes later, they stood outside the home of Edith Erickson, Ashley's sister and co-conspirator. Through the windows, they could see her packing suitcases, apparently preparing to flee now that the operation had collapsed. Matthew's phone rang. It was Peter, calling from Frank Baxter's ranch in Montana. Dad, I saw on the news about your accident. But you're okay, right? You promised you'd explain everything. Matthew's voice softened as he spoke to his son. I'm fine, Peter. And yes, I'll explain everything when you come home. Are you ready to hear a story about why good men sometimes have to do terrible things to protect their families? Yes, sir. Then listen carefully. As Matthew told his son the truth about betrayal, justice, and the price of loyalty, his team prepared for the final chapter of their operation. Edith Erickson was about to discover that some debts could only be paid in blood. The reckoning was almost complete. Chapter 8, Blood Debts. Edith Erickson threw clothes into a suitcase with frantic desperation as dawn approached. The news of Clayton's arrest had reached her 20 minutes ago through encrypted channels, and she knew the federal net would close around her soon. Her 2 children, Emma and Marcus, slept soundly in their beds, unaware that their mother's greed was about to destroy their lives. At 33, Edith possessed the same auburn hair and green eyes as her sister Ashley, but where Ashley had maintained at least some facade of maternal warmth, Edith was calculating coldness wrapped in designer clothing. She had been the architect of Ashley's seduction by Clayton, seeing an opportunity to eliminate the brother-in-law she had always despised while securing a substantial financial windfall. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello, Edith." Matthew's voice was calm, almost conversational. Leaving town, Edith's blood froze. Through her bedroom window, she could see the silhouettes of armed men positioned around her house. "Matthew, I thought you were dead. A lot of people have been making that mistake lately. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, but I have plenty to say to you. You see, Edith, I've been reviewing the communications between you and Ashley. Your encouraging texts about eliminating the boring husband. Your advice on how to hide financial transfers. Your promise to help raise Peter after his father was dead." Edith moved away from the window, her mind racing. "You can't prove anything. Those communications could have been fabricated. Perhaps. But I don't need to prove anything in a court of law. See, while Clayton and Ashley will face federal prosecution, you present a different kind of problem." "What do you mean?" Matthew's voice turned colder. "You helped plan the murder of your sister's husband and the father of your nephew. You put an 8-year-old child in danger. In my moral framework, Edith, that makes you irredeemable." The line went silent, and Edith realized with growing terror that Matthew wasn't calling to threaten her with arrest. He was calling to sentence her. The front door exploded inward as Jamie Clark and Dwayne Reese entered with military precision. Edith screamed and ran toward her children's rooms, but Caesar Meadows emerged from the hallway, blocking her path. "Your children are safe," Caesar said calmly. "They're sleeping, and they'll continue sleeping until this is over. We're not monsters, Edith." Matthew entered through the front door, followed by Theodore Snow and Guillermo Cantrell. In the familiar surroundings of a suburban home, the men looked even more dangerous, soldiers operating in a civilian environment with deadly purpose. "Sit down," Matthew commanded, gesturing to the living room sofa. Edith had no choice but to comply. She found herself surrounded by 6 men who radiated lethal competence, each one representing a different aspect of the nightmare she had helped create. "Let's review your crimes," Theodore said, consulting a tablet. "Conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to assault on a minor, fraud conspiracy, and most importantly, betrayal of family." "I want a lawyer," Edith said, trying to maintain some semblance of legal protection. "Lawyers are for people facing legal consequences," Matthew replied. "You're facing something much more primitive." Guillermo activated a laptop and projected surveillance footage onto the wall. The screen showed Edith meeting with Clayton 6 months earlier, before Ashley had even been recruited for the operation. "You approached him first," Matthew observed. "Ashley didn't seduce Clayton. You delivered her to him like a sacrifice." The footage continued, showing Edith providing Clayton with detailed intelligence about Matthew's routines, business practices, and family relationships. Her voice came through clearly as she described her brother-in-law as weak and predictable. "Here's the part that really interests me," Matthew said as a new video began playing. This one showed Edith disciplining her own children with casual cruelty, screaming at 8-year-old Emma for spilling juice, and slapping 10-year-old Marcus for forgetting to do his homework. "You're not just a co-conspirator," Matthew continued. "You're an abusive mother who was planning to use your sister's insurance money to maintain a lifestyle you couldn't afford while terrorizing your own children." Edith's facade finally cracked. "They deserve discipline. Children need firm guidance. Children need love and protection," Dwayne said grimly. "Something you've never provided." Theodore pulled out a thick file. "We've been investigating your background, Edith. 3 different schools reported suspected child abuse. Your neighbors have filed complaints about screaming and crying from your house. Social services has an open file on your family." The scope of their investigation was staggering. These men had assembled a complete picture of Edith's life, documenting years of failures as a mother and human being. "What do you want?" Edith asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Justice," Matthew replied. "But justice takes different forms depending on the crime." Jamie stepped forward with a legal document. "This is a confession detailing your role in the conspiracy to murder Matthew Wiggins. It also includes a voluntary surrender of custody for your children to protective services." "I won't sign that." "Yes, you will," Caesar said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Because the alternative is much worse. Matthew leaned forward, his eyes holding the cold intensity that had made him effective in combat. Here's what you need to understand, Edith. Clayton and Ashley will spend their lives in federal prison. They'll have time to reflect on their choices, possibly even find redemption. But you crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. What line? You targeted a child. My child. You helped plan Peter's death along with mine. That makes you a threat to my family that must be permanently eliminated. The implication hung in the air like a death sentence. Edith looked around the room, seeing no sympathy, no mercy, only cold determination. If I sign the confession and surrender custody, what happens to me? You disappear, Theodore said simply. New identity, relocation to a place where you can't harm anyone else. It's more mercy than you deserve. And if I refuse? Matthew's smile held no warmth. Then we handle this the way we handled problems in Afghanistan. Quick, clean, and permanent. Edith stared at the confession, understanding that her choices had led to this moment. She could sign and live the rest of her life in exile, or refuse and face immediate execution. My children will be placed with a loving family that can provide them with the care and protection you've failed to give them, Dwayne interrupted. They'll grow up safe, healthy, and happy. Without you. The final insult was that her children would be better off without her, and everyone in the room knew it. With shaking hands, Edith signed the confession and custody surrender documents. As soon as the ink dried, Guillermo began uploading the files to secure servers that would automatically transmit them to law enforcement and social services. Transport is ready, Jamie announced. 2 of his operatives entered the house and escorted Edith toward the door. She turned back one final time to look at her sleeping children. They won't remember me, will they? She asked quietly. Eventually. That will be a blessing, Matthew replied. As Edith was led away to begin her exile, Matthew's team secured the house and prepared for the arrival of social services. Emma and Marcus would wake up to find their mother gone and their lives transformed, but they would be safe. The operation was complete. Clayton Mathis would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Ashley faced decades behind bars. Edith had been permanently removed as a threat to innocent children. Matthew stepped outside into the morning sunlight, feeling the weight of the past week settling on his shoulders. Justice had been served, but the cost had been enormous. His marriage was over, his trust in humanity shattered, his son traumatized by experiences no child should endure. But Peter was safe. And in the end, that was all that mattered. His phone rang, Peter calling from Montana. Dad, when are you coming to get me? I miss you. Soon, son. Very soon. Are you ready to come home? Yes, sir. But Dad, is everything going to be okay now? Matthew looked back at the house where 2 children would soon wake up to a new life, free from the mother who had terrorized them. He thought about Clayton Mathis sitting in a federal detention cell, probably still not understanding how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. He pictured Ashley in an interrogation room, finally comprehending the magnitude of her betrayal. Yes, Peter, he said finally. Everything is going to be okay now. The reckoning was complete. Chapter 9. The Price of Justice. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, Matthew Wiggins stood in the visiting room of the Federal Correctional Institution in Florence, Colorado. Across from him, separated by reinforced glass, sat Clayton Mathis. The former predator looked haggard, his carefully maintained appearance replaced by the pallor of a man who had discovered that federal prison held its own unique forms of justice. I have to admit, Clayton said through the phone, I underestimated you completely. Matthew studied the man who had planned his death with such methodical precision. You made the mistake of assuming that everyone else was playing by your rules. How did you know? From the beginning, I mean. When did you realize what Ashley was doing? I didn't, initially, Matthew admitted. Ashley was good at her role. But when Peter came home beaten and terrified, talking about people who knew where we lived, my instincts kicked in. Everything after that was just following the evidence. Clayton leaned forward, genuine curiosity in his eyes. The military background we missed. How did we miss that? Because you researched Matthew Wiggins, the construction company owner, not Matthew Wiggins, the former Army Ranger. My service records were classified deep enough that your standard background checks couldn't access them. And your team. Men I served with. Men who owed me their lives, and to whom I owed mine. We've been through hell together, Clayton. Your operation was just another mission. Clayton was quiet for a long moment, then asked the question that had obviously been haunting him. Why didn't you just kill me? You had every justification, every opportunity. Matthew considered the question carefully. Because I'm not you. I don't kill for pleasure or convenience. Justice required that you face the consequences of your actions in a way that would prevent future victims. Life in federal prison is its own death sentence. Yes, it is. And every day you wake up in that cell, you'll remember the families you destroyed. That's a more fitting punishment than a quick death. Through the glass, Matthew could see that prison had already begun breaking Clayton's spirit. The supreme confidence that had made him such an effective predator was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had finally met his match. What about Ashley? Clayton asked. 25 years, eligible for parole in 15, if she continues cooperating with federal investigations into your network. She's helping authorities locate and compensate your victims' families. And she'll get out eventually? Matthew's expression hardened. She'll get out when she's 53 years old, if she lives that long. Prison is not kind to women who help murder their husbands. The implication was clear. Ashley's cooperation might secure a lighter sentence, but it wouldn't protect her from the violence that awaited child killers and spouse murderers in federal prison. Your sister-in-law? Edith has a new identity and a new life in a place where she can't hurt anyone. Her children are thriving with an adoptive family that actually knows how to provide love and stability. Clayton absorbed this information, then asked the question Matthew had been expecting. And Peter? How is your son dealing with all of this? Matthew's voice softened slightly. Children are resilient. Peter knows that his mother made very bad choices, and that sometimes adults fail the people who trust them. But he also knows that his father will always protect him, no matter the cost. Does he know the details of what you did? He knows that dangerous people threatened our family, and that his father eliminated that threat. When he's older, I'll tell him the whole story. He'll understand why it was necessary. Clayton leaned back in his chair, studying Matthew with newfound respect. You know, if circumstances had been different, we might have been allies. We're both capable of doing terrible things when necessary. No, Matthew said firmly. We're nothing alike. You kill for profit and pleasure. I kill to protect innocent people. That difference is everything. The visit continued for a few more minutes, with Clayton asking about details of the operation that had led to his downfall. Matthew answered some questions and deflected others. But what became clear was that Clayton was trying to understand how someone he had viewed as prey had so thoroughly turned the tables. As the visit ended, Clayton had one final question. Do you regret any of it? The deception, the violence, the destruction of so many lives. Matthew stood to leave, then turned back to face the man who had planned to murder his family. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Ashley chose betrayal over loyalty. I regret that Peter had to learn such harsh lessons about human nature at such a young age. But I don't regret protecting my family, and I don't regret ensuring that you'll never hurt anyone else. That's a very fine line you're walking, Matthew. Perhaps, but it's my line, and I can live with being on this side of it. Matthew left the prison and drove home to the house he now shared only with Peter. Ashley's belongings had been donated to charity, her photographs removed from the walls, every trace of her betrayal erased from their living space. It was painful but necessary, like cleaning a wound to prevent infection. Peter was waiting in the living room when Matthew arrived, working on homework at the kitchen table. At 11 years old now, he had grown taller and more serious, but the trauma of the previous year had been balanced by therapy and the absolute security of knowing his father would protect him. How did it go, Dad? Peter asked without looking up from his math problems. It went fine. Clayton wanted to understand how he lost. Did you tell him? I told him enough. Peter finished his homework and joined Matthew on the couch. They had developed a ritual of talking through the day's events every evening, a practice that helped them both process the changes in their lives. Do you think Mom will ever get out of prison? Peter asked. It was a question that came up periodically, and Matthew had learned to answer it honestly while age-appropriately. Someday, probably. But by then, you'll be an adult with your own life. She won't be able to hurt us anymore. Do you think she ever really loved us? This was the hardest question of all, and one Matthew struggled with himself. I think she loved the idea of us, but not enough to choose us over money and excitement. Real love means being willing to sacrifice for the people you care about. Your mother chose to sacrifice us instead. Peter considered this, then nodded with the wisdom of a child who had been forced to grow up too quickly. I'm glad you chose us. Always, son. Always. That evening, after Peter had gone to bed, Matthew sat in his study reviewing financial reports from Wiggins Construction. The company had thrived in the months since the crisis, partly because Matthew's focus had sharpened to laser intensity. Without the distraction of a failing marriage and the energy drain of Ashley's deceptions, he had been able to expand operations and take on larger projects. More importantly, his team, the men who had helped him destroy Clayton's network, had formed an even tighter bond. They were no longer just business partners, but brothers who had shared a secret war. Jamie's Shield Tactical had become the exclusive security contractor for Wiggins Construction, while Theodore's consulting firm handled background investigations for all new employees. They had created something unprecedented, a civilian organization with military efficiency and absolute loyalty to each other's families. It was, Matthew reflected, probably what Clayton's network might have become if it had been built on trust instead of fear. His phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. New client wants to discuss security for his family. Says his wife has been acting strange lately. Sounds familiar. Matthew smiled grimly as he typed back. Set up the meeting. Some lessons need to be taught more than once. The war against predators like Clayton Mathis would never truly end. There would always be people willing to destroy families for profit, to target children to leverage their parents, to use love as a weapon. But now there was also a network of protectors ready to respond. As Matthew turned off the lights and checked on his sleeping son one final time, he felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. Clayton was locked away forever. Ashley would spend the prime years of her life paying for her betrayal. Edith could never again hurt innocent children. And Peter slept safely in his bed, protected by a father who had proven that some lines could never be crossed without consequences. The reckoning was complete, but the protection was eternal. In the end, that was all that mattered.